How are y'all doing, everybody, today? Welcome to the Houston Texans Indianapolis Colts Rival Podcast Show. I'm Aaron. I'm the Texan fan. Been this way since I was a kid. This is my partner, DJ. He's been an Indianapolis Colts fan for his whole life, honestly, too. And honestly, we got so much to talk about. We got Texans news, Indianapolis Colts news, and afterwards, we're going to talk about the NFL awards coming up and just picking our own picks of who we think should win, but knowing who will win regardless. So, anything going on with the Colts today or this week, or any news happening?
Not too much news, not too much. Many obviously draft prospects,
Mm,
and with the Indianapolis Colts, really, all the fans I would say are looking towards the decision made by Jim Irsay to keep Chris Ballard. I think that has still lingered around the Colts fan base for some time. I've talked to fans and recently, just like talking to fans, and they've all said similar things, right? Similar things in terms of Chris Ballard, him as a general manager. What has he done in his 8 years, tenure?
mhm.
To really keep us successful. And, a lot of his decisions just seem very safe, right? He hasn't very made risky decisions. And
Yeah,
hopefully this offseason that changes. I mean, in his press conference that he did recently, he admitted to his wrongs. He kind of tends to do that a lot, but he did really feel like he was more sincere in this one. But of course, actions do speak louder than words. So we do have to wait and see and kind of see what's going to be the next steps for this Indianapolis Colts team. But
mhm.
you, as a Texans fan, an outsider look, what do you think a GM like Chris Ballard can do in the Colts building to help improve our roster?
Honestly, as I said before, I think the way the GM should be for Chris Ballard, like what he should do in his job, is honestly go after what you're trying to do, not just say the words that you think that you should do. Go after the free agency. Be aggressive. Look at the Senior Bowl because in the Texans we have D'Amico Ryan's and our GM Nick Casario. They already shown videos of them just like watching the players at the Senior Bowl, just on the field watching because they're determined to grab who they want to get in the draft. So that's definitely the way the Colts should be too. Because now it's like people are seeing you as weak. People are seeing you as, oh, they're
Yeah.
not going to do nothing. So it's best to show everybody your aggressiveness. Go to the Senior Bowl. Like, make sure your presence is known. Make sure you show the rookies, the future rookies, that you're there to watch them, to be there, and that's going to boost their energy, especially when they get drafted by you. So definitely do that. Go after who you want to go after in free agency, depending on how the cap space is, and make the moves that you need to get back where you want to get. Whether that's first place in the AFC, second place in the AFC South. So it's just you'd rather fight rather than being at the bottom of the AFC South.
Exactly. It's just to keep fighting and keep continuing. I really think, it's really key for Chris Ballard. And I think a lot of Colts fans are just looking to this next offseason. What is he gonna do, right? Like you said, he's just gotta be louder than what his words are saying. It's different to
Mhm.
say it. You gotta really mean it and do what you want to do and what your intentions are. But yeah, just Chris Ballard. I mean, it feels like he's on his last straw now. I
Yeah.
mean, you can just hear it in his words in the press conference. When I was hearing it, Aaron, I mean, I could just tell you from experience right here. When I was listening to it, Chris Ballard just sounds like he's on his last straw. He's on his
Yeah.
last year. This is kind of his last chance to make it up, to really make those risky decisions and help keep his job, right? And
Mhm.
I think we should see a difference. We should see something different in the offseason. Maybe goes for more trading opportunities to get some really great players in the building of this organization. So hopefully gets talent, hopefully gets something for Anthony Richardson. And then speaking of Anthony Richardson, it is now confirmed that he's going to work with um, the quarterback coach that worked with Josh Allen in the offseason.
Okay.
I don't have his name on me currently, but
Yeah.
he's going to work with the same quarterback coach that worked with Josh Allen to improve his completion percentage. So Anthony Richardson, hopefully we can see that improvement. He's going to put in
Yeah.
the work during the offseason. But I mean, what do you think of that news heading into this offseason?
Honestly, doing something like that, getting a great quarterback coach for him just to teach him, especially a guy who was with honestly the nominated MVP right now, Josh Allen. So that honestly getting a coach for Anthony like that, working on it because his footwork is nice, his athletic body is nice. It's just his passing, it's his accuracy that you got to work on, and just the energy, the mindset, the confidence in yourself. Because you could see that Anthony just lost all his confidence during the season, whether that be the beginning or the middle. And honestly, that's what you got to get. Like with us, with CJ, yeah, we saw him lose his confidence this season because he had a rough, sophomore slump. So it's not even us getting a new coach for him. It's more of him finding his own self, doing better, getting into next season, and that's what we're excited for. So that's definitely what I see the Colts doing too. But also, I see the Colts maybe in the later round or so drafting a quarterback just to be like, hey, here's your competition now. Now work for what you know is your spot. So do what you got to do.
Exactly. And I mean, speaking of that, that's kind of like what the Colts has been, right? Anthony Richardson, I think, like you said, got to have that confidence, got to
Mm.
increase that completion percentage, really work on his craft and work on what he's, really work on his throwing accuracy. And I think, and his throwing motion specifically.
Yeah.
But I think Anthony Richardson can improve. We should
Oh
start to
yeah.
see signs of that with the new quarterback coach he's going to work with in the offseason.
Mhm.
So that should be exciting. But on Texans side of things, what kind of news do you got from Houston?
So far, we, of course, haven't hired nobody for the offense coordinator job so far. But me, I'm like
Mhm.
wanting them to rush it already. My main pick is the offensive coordinator from Ohio State, Chip Kelly. Like his scheme, his like him being in the NFL previously, all the experience. Like he's just the guy I want. Came from Ohio State. Who came from Ohio State? CJ. He knows he'd work well with him. And another high hope for me is we hired Chip Kelly, and believe it or not, in the draft we drafted Ibuka. So that'd be like my Texan fan dream. But we haven't really even interviewed him yet. But we've interviewed uh, candidates like Nick Caley. He's the Rams tight end and passing game coordinator. He's been with McVay for a while now. Like a lot of people are saying he's the number one offensive coordinator prospect, but I haven't really
Mhm.
looked up his name too much, so I really haven't really gained too much knowledge of who he is. We've also brought in Jeff Nixon. He's Syracuse's OC, and apparently, Syracuse is honestly a top three offense that he brought in. So he brought a team from their offense from the ground up. So that's something well to see too. And funny enough, I believe Jeff Nixon was um, in the offensive side under Chip Kelly in the Eagles in previous years. So honestly, to me, it's like we're hiring people that somehow have a relationship to Chip Kelly. So I'm like, go get Chip Kelly. Maybe if we get him, we get these other guys to join him just to say, hey, we want to be with him again. And another interview is our quarterback coach Gerard Johnson. But to me, at this point, I don't
Oh,
want nobody because he's never been an
yeah,
offensive coordinator. He's been a quarterback coach, especially in CJ's life, for a while now. And honestly, with him,
yeah,
I like him, but I don't want him to be OC because I don't want to do something new. I don't want somebody that has, oh, this is
yeah.
their first year. That's what we did with Bobby, and look at us now. We fired him after his second year. And the way our talent is, the way our offense should be, we need somebody with more experience in the league, whether it be college, whether it be NFL, just enough years and knowledge of being an offense coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you there. I think, just like you were saying, hiring someone new, right?
Yeah.
The term
Yeah.
new, right? Definitely. When we transition, I mean, really think about the league like this. I was listening into ESPN, and I mean, they were making some great points. And
Mhm.
one of the points that I've heard from another podcast and I've heard from around the media just looking is really hiring offensive coordinators as head coaches, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's starting to be a common theme,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's the best theme for every single team. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
think it's become really nice. Like, of course, defensive coordinator D'Amico Ryans as head coach. He's
Mhm.
looking like he is a great head coach. I mean, you guys have gone in what back-to-back divisional rounds, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's really huge. But with our head coach Shane Steichen, it's still questioned if he's still the guy and the head coach that can lead the team, right? That
Oh,
can
yeah.
lead men, right? Like, for example, with Mike Tomlin or Dan Campbell, they don't really do
Mhm.
a lot of the play calling. Sort of, they're more leading men. They know how to lead men. They know how to lead a team. That's why
Yeah.
the Lions and Steelers. That's why the Steelers are so consistent, and that's why the Lions are starting to become a really great team, one of the best teams in the league currently,
Oh, yeah.
despite the loss against the Commanders, right? I
Mhm.
really think that a head coach takes a lot, right? That's a huge responsibility.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the theme of making coordinators head coaches,
Yeah,
that theme is slowly starting to really like expose itself as not the greatest idea, right? I
yeah.
think we're starting to see that around the league, and I want to hear some of your thoughts on that. Yeah, that theme on itself. Do you think that's such a good theme in the league, or do you think that we can possibly change that philosophy?
Honestly, the way I see coaches going into being head coaches, whether it be OCs, DCs, going to head coaching. A lot of times I see the coordinators that were previously players, like for example, D'Amico, Dan Campbell, all players that know what the players are going through, know what they're going to experience. Them becoming head coaches is just like it's just equal to each other for them and the players because the players are going to look up to them, knowing, hey, this guy stepped on the field, rather than somebody that never touched the field before as a coordinator or as a head coach. So they'll see them as, oh well, he's not really a leader to me just yet. He's got to earn it. But with head coaches that previously played, they bring that energy. They bring that whether you be an OC or DC, they're going to bring that energy into the program. Just showing the players who they want to be, giving them the culture that they want to be. Like funny enough, when I saw that video that the Jaguars posted of their new head coach of him saying Duval, I was like, oh no, I don't see them doing anything.
Yeah,
Like that just looked embarrassing, and I believe he is a good OC, but I don't know about the head coaching wise. But after hearing that, I was like, oh man, all right, whatever. It might be a little bit of an easy season for us against the Jags, depending on what happens with them. But
yeah.
when it comes to head coaching, yeah, for me it's better when the front office, when the players all know that a leader is truly coming in, knowing not more of not knowing who they are, but more of knowing that, oh, I want that guy as my head coach.
Yeah, totally agree there. I mean, it's just the theme. I mean, we'll see what happens in the future. But of
Hmm.
course, we all know the rumors of Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator of the Eagles, or Kellen Mond being used as or being a candidate for a head coach position. So that's why
Hmm.
I'm also asking that. Like, yes, he's a great offensive coordinator for the
Yeah,
Eagles. He's been a great offensive coordinator. Head coach, we need to find that out, right?
yeah,
So it's just kind of a common thread, but of course, that's something we'll kind of look back to in another maybe episode, kind of touch back on, see if any coordinators did get hired.
yeah.
But it's just excellent. And Bobby Stoic, an example of you know Zach Taylor for the Bengals head coach.
Hmm.
We don't give him enough credit for knowing how to work with the offensive talent he has,
Oh yeah,
right? When
yeah.
you have so much talent on a roster, you really need to know how to give everyone the ball. But that's
Hmm.
specifically for Joe Burrow's responsibility. But knowing how to play call, knowing how to design, right? Leaving that to the offensive coordinator. Zach Taylor does a great job of managing that talent, and I think we just don't give him that enough credit. And Brian Callahan, when he was over at Cincinnati as the offensive coordinator, we don't give him enough credit for what
Yeah.
he was able to do over there with that talent as well. The Bengals have a lot of talent with Joe Burrow. They had Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, all at one moment, and Joe Mixon. And I think during those years that they did have that squad,
Hmm.
they did a fantastic job of managing all that talent. And when you look at someone like Bobby Slowick, he just didn't do a great job of
Yeah.
handling the talent he had. I think it was just too much. I feel like some of the players had frustrations. Probably you can give me more insight on that. Your insight and your thoughts on Bobby Slowick. But I just think that the weaknesses came from not being able to handle or
Hmm.
really design the right plays for all the talent to get a fetch at the ball, right, or
Yeah.
get a reception, right. Like I think that you got to be able to feed everyone, and if you're not able to, there'll be frustrations, calling bad plays at the bad times, at the wrong times, right? So I want to hear some of your thoughts, right? Did Bobby Slowick really struggle with coordinating the talent that he had?
Honestly, I feel the reason he did honestly good the first season was because he was a rookie. He was a rookie
Mhm.
OC, so a lot of teams are not really looking him up, not really watching his game because they're waiting to see who they're going to play against. And he had all his struggles. He had his times where we praised him. And in the second year, he was too predictable. He wasn't ready for the talent that we gave him, like Joe Mixon, Stephon, Tank Dell. Even before their injuries, we weren't scoring a lot of points. Like a lot of the times, even when our defense gave us the ball back, we stalled out, hit a field goal. That was it. Like us as Texan fans, we wanted a touchdown after a interception, fumble. turnover on downs. So it was kind of like so. How can I say, like, it resembled who we were previous years. Like, oh wow, we're just playing the same old Texan football, not doing anything on offense, but defense is playing their heart out. The culture of swarm mentality, you know. And crazy enough, just this week I'd seen from Twitter news, just a lot of insight from just a story that broke out uh, from the previous draft when CJ was drafted. It was that when CJ came in for a visit to the Texans, him and Bobby Slowick got into it when going over
Oh,
plays, when going over this, because to CJ knew, oh, this that, because Ohio State's such a prodigy to be a part of with Ryan
yeah.
Day. So with somebody new like Bobby Slowick, he's gonna look at CJ. I'm pretty sure, looking at CJ like, oh, you know so much, you think you're better than me. So they said apparently they got into it,
Uh,
and that when CJ left and went to go to another team to get interviewed, that he said that Houston was a terrible interview. So, and apparently a lot of, I guess, people in his crowd and all that were saying, oh, I hope he doesn't get drafted to Houston. But lo and behold, he got drafted to Houston, and yeah, I guess that relationship was just quiet behind the scenes, but they had to work it out. And a lot of times during, I would say last season and this season, we really never saw CJ and Bobby talking on the sideline. It was more of just going over plays. But like, because like last year when CJ was having a problem, he would go to somebody like Case Keenum, Gerard Johnson, the quarterback coach, or Davis Mills, and that's how it was this year. But without Case Keenum, because Case Keenum was that vet that we. Because honestly, for me, I would have brought Case Keenum as a quarterback coach, as a backup, because he had that great relationship with CJ. He knows what's going on with CJ, you know. But with Bobby, that was just a relationship that it was like a balance. It was either going to go on one side or the other of how they talk, how they scheme. It kind of felt like D'Amico had to be the parent that didn't want to make a scene, but because these two children were just not working well together. So getting rid of Bobby was a great
mhm.
thing, but now it's just making sure we hire the right OC.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I honestly really think that it's just it's a bad relationship, like you said. It's just hidden behind the scenes. But
Mm,
now Bobby Sok isn't here, right? It's not an issue anymore. And
yeah,
now I feel like Stephon Diggs, like you said, I don't think he's gonna return, but
yeah,
I
no,
still
he's
think the
not.
squad is talented even
Yeah,
without him. I mean, you still have Joe Mixon there. I think Joe Mixon will continue to be on the squad. So
mm,
and that offensive line just has to improve. I think that's
yeah,
got to be an adjustment this offseason.
yeah, most definitely.
Definitely, if you want to see that offense be able to get some touchdown, get some scores, get some points on the board. Um, but starting, move on here. We do have the NFL championship games that
Yeah.
just, we got the scores. I want to hear some of your thoughts before I talk really. Let's just say I'm really angry at the scores. But yeah, let's hear some of your thoughts, man. What did you think of some of the results of the championship games?
So of course, like my uncle, he's actually a diehard Washington fan. He's been with the Redskins Commanders his whole life, even since I was a kid. I was always like, "How are you a Washington fan?" But seeing them go to where where we didn't think they'd ever really go in a while because how their culture's been, how their team's been, but seeing how far they got, they put up a fight against the Eagles, but we could see that the Eagles were, especially with Saquon running all over them, we could see from the start of the game that we knew who was winning, and it was pretty like, okay, we know who's going to the Super Bowl on the NFC side because Washington has it in them, but I think they just need more talent, a little bit more talent and more experience, especially for Jaden. Uh, but on the AFC South side, yeah, I mean, yeah, I was going all in for the Bills, and once that fourth quarter hit, I kind of felt in my mind that I knew where it was heading, and yep, it's where it headed, and I was like, oh, here comes the predictability, and I was like, Eagles and Chiefs, here we go. I'm rooting for the Eagles all the way.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles, and when I say I'm frustrated, I wasn't really frustrated with the Eagles Commanders game.
Mhm.
Anyone could have won that game. Okay,
Yeah.
let me not say it like that. But the Eagles were the winners there. We all knew that when the Commanders did beat them that second time in
Yeah.
Washington, Kenny Pickett was starting. It was
Yeah.
not Jalen Hurts. So I think Jalen Hurts being there, I feel like just adds so much to worry about because Jalen Hurts is an amazing runner.
Mhm.
So now you have to worry about Jalen Hurts' legs and
Yeah.
Saquon. and AJ Brown and Goddard in the outfield who just stiff arms anyone he wants. So,
Hmm.
I mean, at this point, it's just really you got to worry about a lot of weapons. And I really wish luck to that Chiefs defense on the other
Oh
side that has to deal with
yeah.
all those weapons. They dealt with it once, but they did allow 35 points last time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was a really close game. I think this game coming up will be really close as well.
Hmm.
But speaking of the Chiefs Bills, I mean, I could agree with you there. I was frustrated and
Yeah.
upset that the Buffalo Bills ended up losing that game. I really wanted the Buffalo Bills to win that game.
Yeah.
And might I say, I mean, Josh Allen had opportunities. And
Yes, he is.
I
He
think
is.
Dalton Kincaid, another
Another.
tight end that drops the ball. Mark Andrews, now it's Dalton Kincaid. I mean, I'm like,
Yep.
what's going on? Like, when did tight ends, can
Just
we have Rob Gronkowski back?
yeah.
I mean,
And
it's
honestly,
just crazy.
during that game, I felt the Bills' offense was trying to do too much. They were being too
Mm,
hero ball. They stopped using James Cook, and I was like, okay, James Cook was just cooking their defense, but Josh Allen decided, oh, let me start doing plays because I want to outshine Patrick, and that's where a lot of
mm,
teams lose against the Chiefs, especially because I want to outshine the Chiefs offensively, defensively, and somebody like Josh Allen, of course, he wants to outshine Patrick, especially being nominated for MVP, but because of him outshining, trying to outshine him, he did too much. He just wasn't seeing it when the fourth quarter hit, when situations, got increased. But yeah, and somebody like Patrick, of course, he's going to take over when the fourth quarter hits because he's been in the Super Bowl, his playoffs, and all that. So for me, it's kind of like I'm mad about it, but it was also the Bills that just shot themselves in the leg with at the end of the game.
yeah, it definitely was, and like you were saying, I mean, it's just one of those moments that, unfortunately, a lot of teams when they face the Chiefs, like you said, they get into
Yeah,
that, rhythm of just like letting go of running the ball. In reality,
yeah,
you got to stick to running the ball. I mean, look at the Bengals when they beat the Chiefs, right? They ran the
yeah.
ball pretty damn well. So, that's what led to their win in overtime against the Kansas City Chiefs and led to them going to the Super Bowl against the Rams.
Hmm.
But yeah, just unfortunate. I mean, when you look at Mark Andrews, that one against with the Ravens and Bills, and now this one with
Yeah,
Dalton Kincaid, where he had a chance to catch it, kind of hard, but it still
yeah,
hit his hands at the end of the
yeah.
day. And I just think even if he did catch it, I know there was going to be a flag that was going to call it back. So either
Yeah.
ways, even if he did catch it, it wouldn't have meant anything. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just hard to see that. You got to feel for the Bills fans. I mean,
No,
for the
yeah.
most part, they've been
Especially Josh, because
heartbroken,
yeah,
especially
Josh looked
Josh.
he looked so depressed, and I was like, oh man. I'm like, well, you'll get
Yeah.
there, maybe you'll get there.
One day, man. I just
One,
think one day he will be able to get there, and they had weapons, and I think James Cook. They had a great offensive line. James
Mhm.
Cook was there, and he was doing great. I just don't get why the offensive coordinator didn't really call enough plays for James Cook. And you look at the carries, right? I mean, if
Mhm.
I could look at the carries here, right, on the game as a whole, I mean, I think James Cook he was doing really well. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
game, he was able to get in scores, get in the touchdown. From what I'm looking at here, he had only 13 carries. That is not enough for James Cook,
Oh man.
considering that he was running really well the whole game. He had 2 touchdowns, a 33 long. I mean, yeah.
Man. And that's where I say they try to play too much hero ball with Josh Allen. Like when they're at the goal line ready to score a touchdown, what they decide to do? Oh, let's quarterback sneak it. Like you are 4 5 yards out. Why are you quarterback sneaking it when you could just have James Cook either get a screen, get a hitch route, get a split zone instead of. But no, you decide to make a predictable play by saying, "Hey, Josh,
Mm.
run it." Like, oh, like no, you're just being too cute, too fancy. Like, don't do that, especially in Kansas City.
Yeah, it's just you're unable to you just really can't do that against,
Yeah,
Mahomes and what he is. I mean, he's a really great, Mahomes is a great player. I mean, we know him.
yeah,
He's a great quarterback.
yeah,
They have a great offense. A lot of the referees were double checking some of the plays. I mean, one
yeah.
of the plays where I believe Hollywood Brown, I believe was the receiver who caught no, it wasn't Hollywood Brown. My bad. It was
Uh,
Xavier Worthy
yes,
who
yes,
caught an incredible pass. I mean,
yes,
when I was seeing it, I was like, how did he catch that? And then they had to review it again, and you
yeah,
know why, right? The media is gonna
yeah,
be like, "Hey, So the referees made sure to review a lot of the calls, double check, make sure it was a clean game. But just unfortunate for the Buffalo Bills. But those were the championship games. Those were the results. We got our Super Bowl, and
Hmm.
now we are going to talk about the halftime. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about the NFL honors and talk about the candidates and who we think is going to win some of these awards. So, should we start with the AP Most Valuable Player of the Year?
Yeah, most definitely. Honestly, for MVP, the predictable answer to me, the predictable answer is gonna be
Mm.
Josh Allen. But for me, if I had a if they told me who do you want as MVP, I'm going with not a quarterback. I'm going with Saquon. I'm going as Saquon as my MVP
Ooh,
because he put up historic numbers. He literally in almost I don't even know how many years it's been. He could have beaten Eric Dickerson's record, and that could have been just like the most
yeah.
historic thing ever. And but because of the final game of the season, you don't want him injured. You decide not to play him, which is smart because say he breaks the record and say breaks something in his body, you don't want that. But because of what Saquon's done, especially him being in the Super Bowl now, he's the reason why they took over a lot of games and won them. So for me, honestly, it's got to be Saquon because honestly, and also because Saquon helped me in fantasy, with all those yards. So
Yeah.
to me, Saquon's my why not give it to him the MVP instead of just a basic quarterback? Because to me, the MVP is just a basic quarterback trophy, and nowadays. So yeah, for me, it's got to be Saquon, but I know the most obvious answer is more likely Josh Allen.
Yeah, and we know it's a regular season award. So in
Yeah.
that case, I would actually my vote's gonna go to Lamar Jackson. I
Oh,
think
okay.
Lamar Jackson this season has proved that he's not just a running quarterback, he's also a passing quarterback. He was
Hmm.
having a lot of passing touchdowns. I think when you look at someone like Lamar Jackson, his stats kind of surprised me here, and I really liked what he was able to do on the Baltimore Ravens, and specifically, even when you look at it, I mean, he was definitely just a really good in terms of efficiency, touchdowns. He had 41 touchdowns,
Hmm.
and I think 41 touchdowns and 4 picks. I mean, he only threw 4 interceptions. I think when you
Yeah.
look at that as a whole, he did a fantastic job. I mean, his completion percentage was 66.7. And people want to argue Joe Burrow, but at the same time, Lamar Jackson, the Ravens had a better record,
Yeah.
and they were much more of a winning team. I think Lamar Jackson just feels like the MVP. Of course, he's already gotten it, so maybe
Yeah.
Josh Allen will end up getting it. But I think my candidate, and I think who will win, is Lamar. But I do
Hmm.
agree with your statement there. I think Saquon Barkley could definitely win it, breaking
Yeah.
those records, and I think he definitely put his team in a lot of positions to win. When Jalen Hurts was falling short, Saquon was there to the rescue and there to help that Eagles team win those
Hmm.
tight, close games. So I think that is another candidate there. But definitely, I think the MVP is going to be interesting to see who wins it.
Oh yeah.
But now moving on to the Defensive Player of the Year, and we have some great candidates here. But who is on your mind for DPOY?
Honestly, with defense player of the year, I've been hearing a lot of names say like Zach Bond. He's done great and all. But for me, my pick, a lot of times the same for defense player of the year. MVP is a quarterback trophy. For me, defense player of the year is sometimes honestly a defensive end trophy or a linebacker trophy. But for me, I'm gonna go cornerback this year, and I'm gonna say Patrick Surtain because Patrick
Mm,
Surtain did so much this year. He was honestly a killer in the secondary. For me, I would say he could compete with so many teams, but for me, it's because of the Broncos record. That's why they don't look at stats. A lot of times they look more at record and whose name is like the most high profiled on the defensive side. So for me, I'm gonna go Patrick Surtain just because he's done so much. Honestly, he was a killer at corner. For me, I could say the same thing for Texans Derek Stingley. He did so much,
mm.
but not seeing his name in Defense Player of the Year, it's nothing to me. But for me, I would like to give it to somebody like Patrick Surtain, being on a Broncos defense that even though their record showed something less, their fight in the games was something better, and he was a key reason.
Yeah, I honestly think someone like Patrick Surtain, I mean, he had good amount of interceptions, right? He had a good amount of tackles, and I think Patrick Surtain is an underrated player as a whole. I don't think
Hmm.
he gets enough respect for what he does for that defense.
Yeah.
Kirby Joseph, the defensive coordinator, calling the plays for the Broncos, using him really nicely in those coverages, and just he's just a very good ball hawk. He knows where to find the ball. He's really good
Oh,
interceptions, and he's a really good player, really good athlete. I think he's a great corner, and
yes.
wouldn't be surprised if he won it. I think it's always going to like defensive ends. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett, they're amazing. But
Oh yeah.
Trey Hendrickson, if you look at the sacks, I mean, he only got 17.5. That's good,
Oh
but
yeah.
that's not DP, defensive player good. I
Yeah.
think defensive player of the year, we saw TJ Watt win it, but it was over 20 sacks.
Yeah.
And I just think I have a feeling it's either going to go to Patrick Surtain or Zach Bond. I think
Hmm.
Zach Bond is another candidate that we could start to look at for defensive player of the year. Um, TJ Watt, I don't think did enough this year to really win
Yeah.
it. I think, he kind of backtracked. He's still an amazing player. I just think
Oh
that
yeah.
it's going
Most
to either
definitely.
go to like, Patrick Surtain, Zach Bond. But I mean, if Trey Hendrickson ends up winning it, I mean, I wouldn't mind that either. I think he's a
Hmm.
great player and a great defensive end. But I think when it comes to putting your team in positions to win, you got to give it to Patrick Surtain or Zach Bond.
Yeah.
They just felt like very impactful players on the field.
Hmm.
And now, as we look through that, we are going to flip to the other side and look at the offensive player of the year. And this is going to get more interesting here. But who do you think is going to be the offensive player of the year?
So because I know MVP is not going to go to my choice, because I know MVP is going to go to either quarterback, Josh Allen or Lamar, or even say Joe Burrow. For me, offensive player of the year is Saquon. Once again, like I would pick Saquon for another award, but offensive player of the year would go to him because of how much he did. Like, not to give him an award, whether it be MVP or offensive player of the year, would be just a giant joke. So if he
Mhm.
doesn't get MVP, it'd be obviously offensive player of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that as a whole. And definitely offensive player of the year, I would give it to Saquon as well. I think there's a lot of good candidates. You got Derrick Henry, Lamar, but Lamar, I gave MVP to him. So I think I'm
Yeah.
going to give offensive player to Saquon. And I think if Saquon doesn't win MVP, I think he'll definitely get offensive player of the year. And
Mhm.
Lamar will probably get MVP or Josh Allen or Saquon. We shall see what the result is there. But I like the offensive player of the year candidates. Not much to talk about there. Did you have any finishing thoughts for offensive player of the year?
No, it's just mainly give credit where credit's due to somebody like Saquon because I know I mean, he should win Offensive Player of the Year, but you got to give credit where credit's due of how much he did. Say if he doesn't win MVP, but how much he did during the
Mhm.
season. So it'd be like I know Derrick Henry did a lot in the season, but it didn't compare to how much Saquon did for his team. How he was breaking records almost every game. So it definitely should be more credits due of who did the most work, which was Saquon in all offensive players of the season.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. And, just, going through the next candidates, we're going to flip it to the other side. This is going to be the defensive rookie of the year,
Oh,
which is
I have
definitely
fun for
going
this
to
one. That's all I
be,
know.
yeah, defensive rookie of the year is a good one. We have some great candidates there. For me, I think defensive rookie of the year, I think there's some amazing candidates. So we have two
No,
LA Rams and two from the Philadelphia Eagles. You also got the Miami Dolphins with Chop Robinson, great
mm,
linebacker. And I think this one could go really to Cooper DeJean or even
mm,
Quinton Mitchell. I think they both have been amazing. If I had to choose one, it's pretty tough. I think the LA Rams, Jared Verse is an amazing player and has really been a stud for the Rams in
mm.
pressure and sacks. Um, but I think I'm gonna go with probably Quinyon Mitchell here. I think Quinyon Mitchell
Oh,
has been an amazing player. And I mean, I want to hear some of your thoughts. Who is your candidate there for Defensive Rookie of the Year?
so for me, being really biased in this part because it really that ticked me off is NFL decided not to add a great rookie cornerback like Kamari Lassiter because he was a dog for us on the outside, inside, being backup to Derek Stingley, and I had to look up the stats because I was like, ain't no way that he's not nominated, and I looked up the stats for like say a comparison between him and Cooper DeJean, and
Mhm.
Cooper DeJean had he played 16 games, he had 50 tackles, six pass deflections, and but the key part is he had no interceptions.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, Kamari on the other side had he played two less games, 14 games, but you know that's not even much. It's only two games missed. But compared to Cooper, he had 54 tackles. Cooper had 50. He had one safety. Cooper had no safety happen. He had 3 picks, and Cooper had none. And he had 10 pass deflections compared to his 6 pass deflections. So for me,
Hmm.
it kind of ticked me off seeing that Kamari wasn't even thought about to the NFL, wasn't like brought up, especially with our defense being a key top 10 defense. So for
Yeah.
me, I feel as if they're going to pick somebody like Quinyon Mitchell or Cooper DeJean. I think just because team wise, media wise, because honestly for us, yeah, they talked about us here and there, but they didn't talk as much in media as much as they did somebody like the Eagles or Chiefs or somebody like that. But it kind of makes me mad that like they decided not to even give a nomination to somebody like Kamara Lassiter or our stud of a safety rookie, Kalen Bullock.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think when you really think about it, I just think Quinion Mitchell will probably be the ideal candidate.
Yeah.
Um, Jared Verse is another amazing player. I mean, you
Oh
got
yeah.
Braden Fisk as well from the D from the Rams, but like you said, Kamarion from the he's from the Texans, right? I
Yes.
believe.
Kamari. Yeah.
Yes, the
Kamari Lassiter.
Texans. I think he just doesn't get enough attention, and I really think if he did, he would have been on this list. And like you said, you
Yeah.
notice the stats. He's better, probably better than Cooper DeJean in some areas, and I
Mm.
think that he should definitely be up here. But again, these are the finalists. I think probably Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell will be
That's
the
what I
ideal
believe. Yeah.
candidates for this. And we can now flip it to the other side for
Mm.
offensive rookie of the year. And might I say, this is probably already won by Jaden Daniels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without question. I love Brock Bowers. I love
Oh
Bo
yeah.
Nix. Don't get me wrong. I like Brian Thomas Jr. I like Malik Neighbors. But Jane
Mhm.
Daniels, we all know it's gonna go to Jane Daniels.
Oh yeah, like trust me, Brian Bowers. He did so much on a Raiders offense that you didn't think would do
Definitely.
much, but he showed up and showed out. He reminded me of somebody like Laporta from the Lions or any like just making the yards, just making those plays, and somebody like Bo Nix, like to me, I didn't think at the beginning of the season I didn't think Bo Nix was going to do much, but as the season was progressing and ending, Bo Nix like really showed out to me. I was like, oh, okay, if maybe he does a little bit more, say especially in the playoffs, like say they beat the Bills, I would have been like, okay, Jaden, you kind of have competition right here. But to me, Jaden is the overall winner of this award. For me, I'm just kind of glad that somebody like Caleb Williams wasn't nominated and won it. So for me, Jaden Daniels, yeah, I'm happy for him that he'll win this award because this is an obvious award. Just gonna hand it to him before even saying his name.
Yeah, an excellent player, really great person, a really great character.
Mm.
And now we got, comeback player of the year. This is definitely a really great award. We got some great candidates, but for me, I think comeback player of the year, um, you know, I want to say it, and it took me a while to kind of think about, okay, who could be the ideal comeback player, but I think it's going to go to Sam Darnold. And,
Wait, honestly, that's me and
considering
you.
the record that they
Yeah,
got and what he did for that team,
yeah,
and, how Kevin Stefanski really helped him a lot with the
yeah.
Vikings, I really think Sam Darnold's going to get it. Now, I don't know if you have a different candidate. What would be your candidate for comeback
Oh
player?
no, I was gonna say I was gonna go Sam Darnold. I was honestly stuck on who I wanted because I thought about Joe Burrow. He dealt with injury and all that. But to me,
Yep.
somebody like Sam Darnold, like years ago, people were making fun of him because I thought I saw ghosts on the field with the Jets. A lot of people were saying, oh, he's just a bust. He's not gonna do that. He's just gonna be a trash backup. And unfortunately, for the JJ McCarthy injury, we wouldn't know what the Vikings offense would have looked like if JJ McCarthy was a starter. But because of how Sam Darnold came in, played his heart out, showed up and showed out. Like if Vikings don't keep him, he's gonna get the bag somewhere else. But being with the Vikings really showed other teams of who he is, who he can play like. Like yeah, he did unfortunately choke in the playoffs. I didn't think I had a feeling that was gonna happen, but I didn't think it would have happened that badly. But I'm not gonna base the playoff game compared to the whole season that he accomplished because I didn't really think the Vikings were gonna put up great numbers the way they did. Like they were literally
Yeah.
tied for their division, so like that division was stacked over there in the NFC. So them being only one game from the lines of winning the division, like that just shows who Sam Darnold became, why he deserves to be comeback player of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think, as we're starting to wrap up here, we have two more awards, ladies and gentlemen. And, comeback player, definitely one. Sam Darnold's probably going to win it, but we shall see. Coach of the year is where it gets interesting. I think it's in between these two. Tell me if you agree. I think it's between Kevin O'Connell and Dan Quinn. And I will
Okay.
tell you why.
Yeah.
Those are the head coaches that, to me, face the most adversity this year. I
Yeah.
think Commanders and Vikings have rosters that don't have a lot of talent. With Dan Campbell, Andy Reid, they had talent, to
Mm.
work with.
Oh yeah.
Sean Payton is a really good candidate too, but I just think that Kevin O'Connell and Dan Quinn are more ideal candidates for this. And Sean Payton, I think the Broncos were an amazing team, and I wouldn't
Mhm.
be surprised if Sean Payton won it as well.
Yeah.
But for me, I think I just have this feeling that Kevin O'Connell will end up winning it because no one expected the Vikings to be as good as they were, getting
Mhm.
14 wins. I think that was just immense and just absurd. Like no one expected the Vikings when JJ McCarthy got hurt. Everyone
Yeah.
thought the Vikings were just going to rebuild, right?
Oh yeah.
Like no one thought. And with Dan Quinn, Commanders, you got Jaden Daniels, you got potential there. With Sam Darnold, no one knew how Sam Darnold was going to perform.
Yeah.
So I think my ideal candidate that I'm going to choose is probably Kevin O'Connell.
For me, honestly, to me, like, because I always base things on my thoughts of who I believe the media is trying to hype up to be the award winner, and for me, it'd be somebody like, oh, they want to give the award easily to somebody like Dan Campbell just because the Lions did,
Mm,
had a great record. But to me, my key coach that I'd give the award to is Dan Quinn because to me, Dan Quinn, like I didn't think Washington was going to do what they did. Like in the beginning, I thought Jane Daniels would have had a nice rookie season. I didn't think he'd overpass what CJ did last year. Like to me, Jaden has the greatest rookie year of all time at this point. And to me, I would regret saying that a couple months ago, but after seeing what he's done, he took him to the
mm,
NFC Championship. He overpassed it all. So and why? Because of Dan Quinn. Like Dan Quinn took that team from the ground up. Honestly, he drew that team. Like to me, I didn't think somebody like Eckler would go off the way he did because he had key plays. The offensive line fought their ass off to keep Jane Daniels secured, except for that Eagles game last game. But
mm.
also their defense was going at it, and then because they knew who they were, they decided, hey, let's go get Marshawn Lattimore, and it's like, okay, you're really being who y'all want to be, fighting to where y'all want to be. Y'all overcame the Cowboys, overcame honestly by beating the Eagles. Yeah, because of Kenny Pickett, but I mean, they still had the rest of their team healthy, but y'all still got a game off of them. So just showing how much y'all can fight just really like proved as to who the team was and why did the team win because of the coaching as well. So I would give the coach award to Dan Quinn, especially getting to the NFC Championship. Like nobody would have thought, oh, Washington's Commanders NFC Championship this season. I wouldn't have thought that.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I was telling you, I was stuck between Dan Quinn and Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah.
I was really stuck between those two. I think those two are probably the ones that shine out to me the most. And then we move on to our last award, which is going to be Assistant Coach of the Year.
Okay.
Now, I might be a Vikings fan for saying this because I feel like I've been choosing a lot of Vikings candidates,
Yeah.
but Brian Flores definitely shines
Oh
here, and I
yeah.
think Joe Brady as well. I think with Buffalo as offensive coordinator, as
Mm.
he didn't have a lot of talent, in terms of
Yeah.
receivers. He had James Cook in the backfield, but other than that, not much depth. Then
Mm.
you have receivers to work with, but the talent, you lost Stephon Diggs, you lost Gabe
Yeah.
Davis. Now, you bring in Curtis Samuel, who's an okay receiver, right? Not much to
Mm.
work with Joe Brady, but he still does a really great job. And then you look at Brian Flores, who has another great resume, right? Not
Mm.
having the best defensive talent, but having the really good system to make that defense good,
Yeah.
despite the lack of talent it had. So I just think the Minnesota Vikings, what he was able to do there, I think those two stand out to me. But which ones stand out to you in Assistant Coach of the Year?
Honestly, if I gave an award to an assistant coach, it honestly has to be um, Ben Johnson from the Lions because of how much he did for
Yeah.
the Lions, and especially doing what he did. Like, yeah, the playoffs happen, the mistakes happen, but honestly, blame that on Jared Goff more than the
Mm,
OC. Like, yeah, the OC did have some plays that messed up, but Brian Johnson, I believe, coached so well this year. That offense is prolific. They scored so many points. Like me, that was a fantasy point team. If you want some fantasy points, you can pick any player and they're going to go off. Like he had Jameer Gibbs have like a whole breaking record season. And to me, Jameer Gibbs is great to watch, you know, and it shows of who he is as a assistant coach, especially winning the award by getting hired as a head coach now for the Bears. And me, I'm excited to see what he does for the Bears. Like to me, I think him with the Bears is going to be watch out for them, especially in their own division. Him staying in his own division to be like, you know what? I'm gonna go face the Lions. I'm gonna take this offense and go face the Lions and probably beat them. So I'm definitely gonna give him the award for doing what he did. And the Lions, it's interesting to see because of how many of their coaches are left, like Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson.
Yeah, no, Ben Johnson, an amazing candidate. The only reason why I'm not choosing him, I feel like
Mm.
as a candidate, is because he's had all the talent, and I just
Yeah,
feel like
yeah,
assistant coach. I always like to see coaches like who's facing the most adversity and challenges and still pulling through.
mm.
Um, and I think Brian Flores, Joe Brady are ones to stand out. Ben Johnson is also another great offensive coordinator. I would
Yeah,
not be surprised at all if he won it.
mm.
Just because, like you said, he just done so much for the team, and now that he's leaving, now is a farewell award. You give him assistant coach of the year. I would not be
Yeah,
surprised if that happened with him and all the success that he's going to have with the Chicago Bears as well.
yeah.
But definitely, that is probably the last topic that we have here for this episode. NFL honors. I can't wait to see who wins these awards. But any last thoughts, Aaron, as we're finishing off here?
Uh, Honestly, one quick award that I know they'll give credit to is play of the year, and play of the year for me will be the Jaden Daniels Hail Mary.
Play of the year, Jane. Oh yeah, I think
Yeah,
if there's a
yeah,
play of the year, kind of forgot about that one. But
yeah. No, you're
Jane
good.
Daniels Hail Mary will probably be my mine
That's what
as
I'm
well.
definitely
I think that
thinking.
one's really good.
So yeah, so definitely that would be, especially with the camera showing the face of Caleb Williams. That's what I want to see. But other than that, yeah, that'll be the end of the NFL awards, and honestly, that'll be the end of our podcast today, the end of our episode. So thank y'all everybody for joining us, watching us, giving us the views that we're happy to grow. We're happy to show everybody that who we are. So we definitely appreciate y'all. We want to keep growing. We have JDW Sports Talk Show, the YouTube channel, this podcast. We want to grow and become better, and do what we hopefully can do in the future. So this is Aaron, the Texan fan, and my boy DJ, the Colts fan, and y'all watch the Rival Podcast.